My name is Barbara Deutschmann. I work with TIER Australia and I manage the Indigenous programs of TIER Australia. That involves support of some Indigenous partnerships in different parts around Australia and also trying to raise the awareness amongst Australian Christians of the issue of Indigenous disadvantage. I think, having gone to India as a missionary was an interesting exercise. I felt, that we were able to make a contribution in a medical capacity there and work with Indian Christians. When I came back to Australia, I faced this enormous moral dilemma because here in Australia I realised that I was actually part of the problem. In India, not being British, I guess, I didn't feel necessarily responsible for the colonial history of the place that led to some really negative results. But here in Australia, I'm actually part of the problem. My life has actually benefited by the land dispossession, and suddenly I find myself in the middle of a moral crisis in Australia, and I think that is dawning on a lot of Australian Christians as well. I think too, from the Anglican point of view, Anglicans have actually had quite a strong history with Indigenous people in Australia. Anglicans did run, for instance, 2 of the missions around Victoria at the time when the government decided to have a kind of protection policy and bring Indigenous people into missions. The Anglican Church ran 2 of them. One of them was Lake Tyers, and I think many people have heard of that one, and it's still an area in which the Anglican Diocese of Gippsland has a great deal of interest. So I think, the Anglican Church all around Australia ran missions, ran reserves. They also ran orphanages, and so were therefore complicit in the stolen generations. I should say that the story is not altogether bleak. I think there is a mixed history there. There certainly were times when the Anglican Church did some wonderful things and some very good mission results, learning language and actually bothering to learn culture and really form deep relationships. I think John Bulmer, who ran Lake Tyers Mission, for instance, did a great job at that, and there are many other examples. But it is an issue for the Melbourne Diocese. A lot of our churches, for instance, lie on land which has never been acknowledged as belonging to the Kulin nations and the Wurundjeri people of the area. And I think it's time that we actually really took a stand on that and actually began to at least acknowledge that land and make restitution for some of the benefits that we've received. Looking to the future, I think it would be a wonderful thing if we could move closer toward restitution and really good relationships with Indigenous people. It's something that needs to be done right across the country, but I think the Church has a special role to play in that. I feel it's the kingdom of God is meant to be the new heaven and the new earth in some kind of little sense, beginning and springing up here and now. And to see such a profound injustice unaddressed, I think, is a major issue. And if the Church could take a lead in that, then I think it would go a great way toward healing a real moral problem within Australia. And I really just personally feel that we've missed out on the tremendous gifts that God has given Indigenous people. I think of their attitude to land. They have a wonderful sense of stewardship of land that we have lost. And if we could spend time with them and learn from them that attitude to hearing what the land's saying and actually working with it rather than, building and digging and mining and so on, and our very sort of functional view of land, we would all gain. I think there's enormous gifts there to be shared, and I think it's part of the richness of God's kingdom that Indigenous people be allowed to express that and join us in that task. I'd love to see real partnerships of reciprocity, not relationships that are characterised by people being patronising or welfare, or charity. I long to see real relationships of strong people working and pulling together, and I would love that to happen in the Anglican Church and for us to really take a lead in that. I think another reason why I think the church should actually set the example and lead the way is because something like 70% of Indigenous people call themselves Christians. And that is because of the work of missions in the past. And there's been a strong and really successful mission movement which has made a lot of Indigenous people call themselves Christians. Now, therefore, they are our brothers and sisters in a special way, not just fellow citizens of Australia. So that's another reason why I think we should actually be leading the way, if you like. And I think there's also not only a role for the church as a group and as a denomination, but there's also a role within that for individuals. In fact, I suspect that no matter what happens at denominational leadership level, there's going to have to be individuals within churches who lead the way. And I think that's a really important thing, that people realise that we can't expect the denomination to do it for us, but for each individual Australian Christian there's actually a role to be played in learning, in praying, in seeking to build relationships and helping to lead their congregation into a really active reconciliation process.